So next, item 7, do we want to come back to it in just a little bit?
Yes, we'll delay item 7, the Bossier City charter question, because we do have representatives from Bossier City who want to be present. They haven't arrived yet. So we'll move that to a little bit later this morning. Okay, so let's turn to item 7, the Bossier City, the Bossier City, City of Bossier City, the charter. Yeah, go ahead and read.
So item 7 is, it's 3 propositions for the city of Bossier City. The first proposition is to amend and restate their charter. The second and third propositions are relative to term limits for the mayor and the city council. And I'll just give you a little bit of history on this. In July of 23, a group of citizens of Bossier City, the coalition, submitted a petition to the city calling for an election to amend the city charter to enact term limits on the mayor and council members retroactively from January 2024. The petition was certified by the Registrar of Voters and the city attorney. However, the council failed to adopt an election call resolution as required by the charter. A member of the coalition filed a request for a writ of mandamus ordering the council to call the election for December 7th. After the order was issued, the council failed to add an item to the agenda by a vote of 3-3. Dissenting council members have appealed the decision of the trial court to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and oral arguments took place on November 19th. That case is still pending, awaiting an opinion from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Going back to August of 2023, the City Council began the process of initiating a charter review commission. The commission's recommendations were heard but not adopted on October 8th, 2024, as they tried to add it to the agenda, but there was not a unanimous vote to do that. The council called a special meeting on October 10th to approve the charter commission's recommendations, and they were adopted with 5 yeas and 2 were absent. The Charter Commission's amendments differ from the coalition's, as the term limits are prospective, with term limit caps beginning January 2025. The morning of the October 14th ad hoc election subcommittee meeting of the State Bond Commission, a temporary restraining order was filed for a preliminary and permanent injunction, seeking the city and council from taking any actions for a special election on December 7th. The propositions were heard at that subcommittee meeting. However, they were deferred by the ad hoc election subcommittee. A motion to dissolve the TRO was signed on October 23rd. The propositions on the agenda today are the same as those from the ad hoc election subcommittee meeting. And I would note that the next election for the mayor and the city council is also on March 29th.
Okay. So I'll try to distill the controversy here on this. And again, let me explain that our job is not to decide who's right or who's wrong in this controversy. Ours is to approve whatever's presented to us, to know that it's made ready for election. But as I understand it, a coalition of citizens put together a petition which reached the requisite number of signers from Bossier City, and it went to the city council. And in theory, I guess it's supposed to be approved there that it's perfunctory, but apparently the city council did not approve it, and thereby there was a disagreement. But the city council did create their own commission, which did approve term limits, which is really the central question here. However, the term limits that they prescribed was a prospective one rather than a retroactive one, which could affect some of the members who are serving currently. It could, if it's retroactive, as I understand it, could mean that they would only have, that they would not be eligible for re-election in the future. If it's prospective, it would be, I believe, 8 years. So what I'd like to ask is there someone here who wants to speak on behalf of 4 who are in favor of this? We had some last time in front of the subcommittee. Oh, there we are. I knew you'd appear. Okay. Yeah, let's hear for those who are in support of the City Council's appointed commission on this issue. Please
Good morning,
identify-
Dr. Fleming,
Yeah,
members of the
identify
commission.
yourself, please.
My name is Richard Ray. I serve as the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Bossier City. I also was a member of the Charter Commission. The city attorney was out at the time with a major health issue, and on a charter commission under our charter, the city council, we have 7 city council members and a mayor. The 7 members of the city council appoint a citizen residing in Bossier City, and the mayor appoints 2, and then the CAO and the city attorney are ad hoc, non-voting members of the Charter Commission. And so I also appear here as an active member of that Charter Commission. We started meetings almost a year ago in January of 2024. We had approximately 25 meetings. Some of those included town hall meetings. They included, some of them were 3 and 4 hours long. There's hundreds of hours that were put into that by representatives of the elected body, all of which are not on the same page with this. Some are in favor of a retroactive version and some are not, the elected officials. But they made appointments to a charter commission and impaneled a charter commission, and the charter commission made recommendations to amend the charter, which is very important, and I don't want it to get lost on this group, that there are 3 items that we would ask be placed on the March 29th ballot, and that is an amended and restated charter, and this is the first time that we've had a charter amendments in 20 years in Bossier City. And I think that the one thing, there's people here that disagree on some things and different positions, but I think that we can all agree, everyone that's here from Bossier City can agree that there were changes that needed to be made to the Bossier City Charter. And the Charter Commission worked very hard. We had a cross-section of Bossier City. We had, different viewpoints. It wasn't always consensus, much like it is in the legislature, but they came to a compromise, and they made significant changes to the charter that need to be passed. They also, as separate items, proposed prospective term limits on the mayor and the council. And the term limit version that is before you today for approval is actually modeled off the version that was passed by the legislature and the citizens of Louisiana in 1996 on the Louisiana legislature. It is prospective. It would start in January, and it would, any terms that would begin at that point would count against serving. It would be a 3-term limit. It's essentially the exact same term limits that are in the Louisiana legislature, 3 4-year terms, and you can sit out and come back. The other version, I would call it the retroactive version, is a retroactive version, and it's important to note that it also would be a lifetime ban. Anyone who has served in the past, if they've served 3 terms, and we have several people that have, would not be able to ever serve again. And I want to make an important point. I'm here as a representative of the city, but I represent 8 elected officials, and they're not on the same page. Some of the elected officials that I represent and my mayor are in favor of, frankly, in favor of either version, but he's openly come out in favor of the retroactive version. But this one that is here before you today is procedurally, it's in a posture where it can be passed. All of the objections that were made when we were here back in October, there were several objections that were made. One was that it was not 60 days prior to presentation to our council, and that was in the ordinance that was passed creating the Charter Commission. Technically, because as was stated by your staff member, because our council didn't add it as a special item, we were technically at day 58. Well, now that's been cured by time. We're well before 60 days prior to the March 29th election. One of the other objections that was made that the citizens of Bossier hadn't had time to look at these voluminous proposed changes to the charter. Well, because we were hoping to get on the December 7th ballot, we've already advertised the entire proposed charter in the Bossier Press Tribune 3 times. It's out there. We've had several meetings. All of the procedural objections that were in place in October have been cured. The only thing that hasn't been cured is the The version that has retroactivity and a lifetime ban is at the Second Circuit Court of Appeal. And we don't know when they're going to rule. I do a lot of work at the Second Circuit. They could rule any day. They might rule in mid-January. It might be later. But because that version is held up, we would ask that you not hold up this version. In theory, both versions could be on the same ballot. In our own charter, it has a provision that allows for competing amendments. And so what is in the retroactive version is a retroactive term limit on the mayor and council. What we have here today is a prospective term limit on the mayor and council.
Well, let me ask you a question
But we also
about
have
that.
changes to the charter.
So you're saying they could be on the same ballot, but as I understand it, the city council has blocked the coalition's version, so it can't move forward?
Well,
Am I correct?
I wouldn't say they blocked it, but if the Second Circuit, if the Second Circuit orders that it be placed on a ballot,
Yeah.
then it will be placed on a ballot.
Right.
If a court says it has to be done, it'll be done. But if
But
they
didn't it-
can both be on the same ballot, Dr.
Right,
Fleming.
but that's theoretically true, but again, didn't the city council actually vote to prevent it from being on the ballot?
Well, they didn't vote to place it on the ballot, and so a
Right. Well,
mandamus
that's the
was
same
filed.
thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, a mandamus was filed to tell them to
Right.
put it on the
Well,
ballot.
the only point I make here is that you say they could both be on the ballot, but the same people that want your version are blocking, in effect, however you want to describe that, the other version. So I'm wondering if maybe they would be willing to approve it and let both be on the ballot at the same time.
Well, that request has been made numerous times by some people that are here. But Dr. Fleming, we can't have both versions on it if you block this version. And so if the Second Circuit comes back in a week after we leave here today and they say, put the other one on, and you don't let this one on, then they both can't be on the same ballot. This one needs to procedurally move forward, and it's in a posture to procedurally move forward. Our charter says that if you have competing provisions, if you have competing amendments, then the one that gets the most votes wins. And so moving forward with this version does nothing to stop the other version. What it does is if we bump it to the May 3rd election, what that does is cost the citizens of Bossier $87,600 because that's what the Secretary of State says the election will cost. If we're on the March 29th ballot, we already have municipal elections, and now the state has the proposed constitutional amendments, and so there will not be that additional cost to the citizens of Bossier. I speak for 8 elected officials. I'm not going to say they're all on the same page. They're not. But I can tell you that all 8 of them would be in favor of both versions being on the same ballot. But we can't have both versions if you don't allow this one to go forward. The other one is in the courts. Whether it's on a ballot is going to be up to judges at this point. But if they say put it on, and this one's not on,
But,
and
but you do concede that had the council approved it, it could we could theoretically have both versions now. So the city council is the one that's put us in this situation, as I understand.
well, I would say some of them, not all of them, they're not all on the same
Well,
page.
they didn't approve, so therefore the only version that's come to us is your version. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's correct, but I would ask that you not stop this version, because if you stop this one, then they both can't be on a ballot, and we're going to continue this leapfrog.
All I'm saying is I think your clients have been part of that's made this happen, is what
Well,
I'm saying.
with all due respect, Dr. Fleming, as I stated earlier, I represent 8 elected officials, and some have one opinion and some have another opinion.
Right.
So it's not my clients, all of
But
my
the combined
clients.
opinion is not to move the other version forward, is my understanding. I mean, I just want to be factually correct here. I'm not arguing. Again, this is not a court of law. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what's actually happening here.
It is factually correct that a majority of the Bossier City Council did not vote to put the retroactive version
Okay,
on
thank
on
you.
the
That's
ballot.
what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Okay,
But I
proceed.
also represent people who wanted it on the ballot.
understand.
So I'm here in a dual capacity, and I was on this charter commission where hundreds of hours were spent
Right.
trying to put together changes to the charter. And so it's very important that not only is there the term limit issue, but if you defer this, you're deferring 20 years of changes in a charter that may never get to the voters. Or if they do, it's going to cost the
All right,
voters a lot of money.
let me ask you this question. So if approved today, it would be on the ballot at the same time that the same members are being reelected. Is that correct, or up for election?
Yes, it would be on the same date as the
ballot?
municipal elections.
So obviously, even if passed today or moved forward today, it wouldn't affect their election because the question wouldn't be decided until after that election. If it's on the ballot at the same time as people running for election or reelection, therefore the question would be again for the next election. Am I correct about that?
That would be correct.
In terms of retroactivity?
In terms of the retroactivity,
Right.
correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions from members of the commission? Oh, okay. We got Representative McMakin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. So we had an issue here in Baton Rouge where we had our mayor suing people and constituents that wanted to do something. I'm curious on the money. Have y'all were any private lawyers hired that contracts were used by the city, so city money was used for these lawsuits?
The city, because we have city council members on one side and a mayor and city council members on the other side, the city is actually funding, there's attorneys for both sides, and the city is funding both sides.
Do you
Now,
know
there
how-
are private individuals that have their own attorney, but the city has, there are members that want the retroactive version, and they have a lawyer that the city pays for, and there are members that want the prospective version. They have a lawyer that the city's paid for.
To your knowledge, how much money's been used? Or I would say wasted. I'm just curious.
I couldn't tell you that, Representative.
You don't know any
McMakin.
contracts that y'all's council has approved and how much they were?
We don't, under our charter, we don't. It goes through our legal department. I would estimate that it's in the $40,000 range, but
Thank
that
you.
would just be an estimate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Senator Edmonds?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm understanding, you said earlier in your testimony, that the mayor would be for either version.
Well, the mayor has come out, it ran on term limits. We had several people, as I explained when I came back in October, Bossier City has had, we had kind of a new group of people that ran for office in 2021. And some members of the council and the mayor ran on implementing term limits in Bossier City. The mayor, fully has openly supported the retroactive version. He also would be supportive of the prospective version.
Okay, and my understanding is the two sitting senators, Senator Bass and Senator Seabar, are also in favor of this particular motion you're trying to get on the ballot. Is that your understanding?
It's my understanding that everyone in our legislative delegation, including Representative Cruz, everyone would be in favor of this prospective version. I don't know that they would be against the other one, but I know that they're in favor of moving this forward, yes.
Okay, but the council did not. Was it a split vote again? Was it?
Oh, yes,
it was a
yes, split,
vote?
yes.
Okay.
And the council, the mayor continually put forward a resolution to place the retroactive version on the ballot. And the council, on a split vote, either didn't agree to add it to an agenda at one point, or they didn't vote to move it forward. And they had, what they claimed to be objections to it. And then prior to the 30 days, a mandamus was filed, and the issue was heard at the 26 JDC, and the judge there did say the council should put it on. Now that, it also opens the constitutionality of this has never been addressed. It's not ripe yet. That would be addressed if it's on a ballot and passed, but the trial court was clear that this council should put it on the ballot. That then went to the Second Circuit. As was stated, oral argument was on November the 19th, and we're waiting on an opinion. But that's on the retroactive version. The Second Circuit will either say put it on a ballot or they won't. And if they say put it on a ballot, we would like for both of these to be in a posture where they can be on a ballot. That's all we're asking.
Yeah,
And if the Second Circuit says don't put it on a ballot, what we don't want is to not have some version of term limits to be placed before the voters of Bossier City. That is my concern, because it's my understanding that we have an 18-month window total from a charter commission to get it on a ballot. And that would mean the May 3rd election would be the very last one, And then I think that it would all be out the window, including 20 years of changes to a charter.
All right, seems like there's some solidarity for that, and then also on that from your information from Secretary of State's office, this, you said, would be an 87,000, did you say?
They estimated the cost to be $87,600.
Okay, so outside of this, this would have been the normal procedure. It would have come on the ballot in March and would have faced then other initiatives on the ballot, therefore saving the taxpayers that amount of money. Is that correct?
Correct. In fact, our normal municipal elections would be on March 29th, and thank you to the state, because of the constitutional amendments, the cost will actually be lower to the citizens of Bossier City on March the 29th than the normal election. But if we bump it to May the 3rd, the cost will be completely borne by the city, and the citizens will pay $87,600, which I would say would be wasted, to use Representative.
And I think the issue for us today, as the treasurer's already stated well, is that we're not for or against. We're trying to provide the proper procedure and the fiscal responsibility for that, so.
Well, and I know, Dr. Fleming, it seems like I'm here advocating for one side or another. I want to make a point that I'm not, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is I represent everyone that is on that council that's in different positions, and I also was at the Charter Commission meetings, many of them. I'm not opposed to the other version. I just don't want this one to be stalled any longer, because as we said in October, there was a lot of talk about there's no rush and we've got time. Well, now we are running out of time. And so we would just respectfully request that this version that has met all the technical requirements be placed on the March 29th ballot. If the Second Circuit comes back, there's plenty of time for that version to be placed on March the 29th. We would just ask that it not be deferred to May the 3rd.
Yeah, and I'll say parenthetically that y'all came to us in October and a subcommittee met with you, at which time we deferred because we felt that now the courts were involved and there should be some maturation of this, which has occurred, but a final decision has not been made. Chairman McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So the last action taken by the City Council was on November the 5th. The resolution was approved, the three amendments that are proposed, by a vote of 6-1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So prior to that council meeting, had there been any unanimous, well, and that's not unanimous, but it's a majority, had there been any other votes that had been taken where that number of council members had an agreement to a prospective term limit process?
No, sir.
Okay, so prior to the commission meeting, coming forth with this resolution of, obviously everybody's in agreements, even the groups that have formed the petition and the council members, now that there needs to be term limits on the ballot in March.
I would say that, yes, Representative McFarland. In fact, I would say that they would agreement that it needs to be on a ballot sometime, either December 7th, which is now passed, or March 29th.
Yeah. So based on the last action taken by the city council, which was, as the treasurer stated, I mean, y'all had a meeting, and it was deferred in October because of a legal challenge. And I mean, there was trying to give time for some of that to resolve itself. And obviously some of it has, in my opinion, been resolved, because now you have, to me, a more unified council saying, yes, we do want term limits, although under the proposed propositions, they're not retroactive. I'm not an attorney, so I don't even know if we can do that or can't do that. That's why it's obviously in court. So what's before me today that I have to understand is the last action taken by the council, voted on 6-1, is asking us to put this on the ballot, and that's it.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Okay. Mr. Bacala? Oh, okay. Very good. Any further questions? If not, we'll excuse you, and those who oppose, if you'd like to step forward, and we'd love to hear from you as well.
Thank you, and we'll stay if there's any other questions.
yeah,
you need to
yeah,
recall us.
please
Yep,
do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have white card David Crockett, who is going to be approaching our witness table, and he speaks against. And then Duke Lowry, who's speaker number 2, both in opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Fleming and members of the Bond Commission. I'm David Crockett. I'm a retired colonel, former Barksdale Air Force Base Squadron Commander, B-1 Vice Wing Commander. I live at 653 Dumaine Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. I live outside the city limits, but I do use Bossier City water and attend Bossier City Council meetings regularly. I'm happy to represent the Bossier Term Limits Coalition along with my buddy, colleague, Duke Lowry. I do want to correct a few things, and I'm going to shorten my comments a good bit because you did a great job summarizing past events. I do want to point out one thing that was just stated, and I think we're going to have to differ in one point. In Louisiana statute RS 33-1395.1, it talks about formation of charter commissions. It says that the members of the Charter Commission shall take office immediately after the election or approval and shall propose the charter and submit it to the governing authority of the municipality within 18 months thereafter. It says the charter shall not be altered or changed in any way, but it doesn't say that it has to be voted on within 18 months. So I'm going to differ with what was just said. I don't think there's the same sense of urgency, and I think Mr. Lowry is going to address that. The genesis of this whole effort was started by the RPEC in Bossier Parish. And our goal is to get term limits in Bossier City, and we're seeking change in Bossier City for numerous reasons not to go into today. Subsequent to the RPEC voting and approving retroactive term limits, which have been retroactive from the very beginning, the DPAC, NAACP joined our coalition as a result of the repeated efforts of the City Council to fight the citizens' petition and the right to petition their government. Anger grew in the community to the point now that we have over 80 citizens, primarily from Bossier City, about 10% that live in the parish, have joined our efforts and become very active in this process. We had over 20 petitioners that walked enormous numbers of days to petition our government. Our first petition was in 2023. That was not mentioned. We've done 2 petitions. We've gotten over 7,000 signatures from Bossier City residents, Bossier City voters. Our petitions have been certified by the registrar twice. Bossier City Council is flagrantly fighting the will of the people. In August and September 2024, Bossier City Mayor and 2 councilmen who support term limits in Bossier, I've never heard in one meeting Tommy Chandler, our mayor, argue that he supported the lesser version of term limits. He's always told me, and I had an office call with him immediately when he took office, and he said he supported retroactive term limits with 3 terms. I've never heard him say he supported anything other than that. You summarized very well how they repeatedly voted our effort down. Bossier City is operated on a 20-year-old charter. They operate very well within the guidelines that are here. They did make some improvements, but they've also made some errors, I think, in their judgment in this, so it's not perfect. It does need to be fixed. Recognizing that the council was attempting to delay our resolution in August 2024, Cassie Mae Rogers, one of our Term Limits Coalition members, a citizen of Bossier City, a very active petitioner who gathered almost 500 signatures, filed a successful lawsuit with a writ of mandamus. I'm going to summarize what 26 JDC commented because I know you won't have the opportunity to hear that today unless I do. 26 JDC ruled that there's no dispute that the petitions had been duly certified and no issue was raised via answer or by affirmative defense regarding the validity of any signatures that would call into question the petition's existence, sufficiency, or certification. No arguments were made, either at 26 JDC or on appeals. Judge Self further questioned the council's attorney on whether he asserted that propositions were unconstitutional, which we just heard a little bit about a while ago, and he replied to the negative. Though he argued that the propositions were invalid because the resolutions would shorten the existence of current councilmen that have already served over 12 years. But I'm going to tell you what the judge said. Judge Self called such an argument disingenuous, since the proposition reads that no person who has been elected to serve for mayor or city councilman for 3 terms shall be eligible for an additional term. Our attorney argued in those meetings, we have term limits. And we've had term limits that have been applied to people who are sitting in office in Louisiana. Look at your judges in Louisiana on the Supreme Court. The judge rebuked the opposition as disingenuous in their interpretation of our proposition. Yet this frivolous argument was used again on appeal, and by the questions and the directions from the appeals court, we feel like we're going to get an affirmative ruling on our behalf.
So let me interrupt you because we don't have a lot of time here.
Right.
So this went to court and Judge Self made a judgment in the initial. And what was his decision?
His judge was in favor of the writ of mandamus that he signed.
Okay.
That was appealed by the city council. We had, again, as was mentioned earlier today, there was over $50,000 that were paid when they fought the first petition in the year before the current filings. Right. We don't know how much they've already hired multiple attorneys for all of their filings during this, so there are significant costs that are happening because of this.
Right. Do we have an idea when their decision, where the appeals decision will come?
We would never know the answer to that, but we expect it relatively soon.
Right. Now, do you agree with the attorney who said that if they do judge in your favor, that it could still be put on the ballot by March, whatever the March date is, 29th, I believe?
If the city council is forced to put it on the ballot or to approve our resolution and gets it before this body, then we could.
Okay.
And that's what we prefer.
Right. All right. Let me ask Mr. Lowry to speak.
And that was the end of my comments.
Okay,
anyway. I was
good.
going to ask for any
Timing
questions.
was good. Thank you. Okay, we have a question, Ms. Freel.
I have a question. Just in terms of timing, what's the deadline for the Secretary of State to get something on the March 29th ballot? I mean, we're talking about a court decision, but is that even feasible if it doesn't get to the Secretary of State? Isn't that why we have such a long agenda today for elections, because of the deadline? Okay. So it would have to go before the council. They would have to put on their agenda. They would have to move forward with their ministerial non-discretionary duty. That's what a mandamus is, before it would be sent here and to be put on that agenda.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that.
I think the difference that I would make with what was stated earlier is the statute that I read to you does not say that this has to be done now or even by the May election. We would prefer to have them both on the same ballot, and this is why. There's going to be confusion among the public, and we all know how voters are. They'll remember some things and they won't remember others. We would rather campaign for or against either one that we prefer at the same time. So that's why we would argue to have them on the same ballot. I think you would agree with that. And I'll also defer to Mr. Lowry if he wants to add to any of those.
Let me kind of recap here, because I'm getting questions up here, and I want to make sure everybody understands. So what happened was citizens, through a coalition and through 2 petitions, the first one, there was problems, so you repetitioned.
Right.
But it was all timely. it came to the city council, and this is a question I'll ask from Ms. Freel, if I can have your attention for a moment. So this was brought to the city council, and they did not move forward. And so my question for you here is, should they, what was their requirement, their legal responsibility in that case?
Unfortunately, no one came and talked to me about this before today, which is unfortunate. And so I'm reading this, but if someone files a writ of mandamus, that means that they're alleging that there was no discretion to the council, that they should have just done it.
Yes.
Sounds like the trial court agreed with the people that asserted it. It is now on appeal. I don't know if they stayed the determination of the trial court. I don't know if the parties asked for expedited consideration. I don't know any of those things, but the reality is the deadlines are going to pass for it to be put on the March agenda.
I can answer part of that. We did file for expedited consideration by the appeals court. It did not get, obviously, a hearing in the November or in the October dates. We tried to get it as quickly as we can. They did file to delay. I don't know if that was called a stay, and maybe Mr. Ray can
So what's
answer.
going to happen is it's going to get mooted out. What's going to happen is whatever happens here today, it's going to get mooted out because something's going to get on the ballot and something isn't. And so they're forcing this body to make a political decision.
Exactly.
And somebody should have contacted me.
Next time we will, for sure. Thank you, Ms. Freel. Well, okay, Mr. Lowry.
Is 5 minutes too long?
No, not at all.
Okay. I thought y'all were in a hurry, and I didn't
No,
want to
we're not in a hurry. I want to make sure that we don't lull people to sleep and they
Yeah,
start
I
losing track.
want to
of
wake
things.
them up. So now's the time you want to listen. So first off, Michael Lowry, Benton, Louisiana. I wear two hats. One, I am one of the spokespersons, like my colleague with the Bossier Term Limits Coalition, as well as I'm the chairman of the Bossier Parish Republican Executive Committee, where this movement started. And additionally to the questions that you had for the Assistant City Attorney, I would welcome, after I speak to you, those same questions that you asked him, ask me. I would love to respond to those as well.
Absolutely.
Because obviously I disagree with
Oh, no,
many of the assertions
anything that
he
I've
made.
asked of them or any comments they've made, you're welcome to respond.
Right, so I put a few notes down that I hope will fill in some of the questions here that some of you may have. From our standpoint, nothing's really changed. What this all completely boils down to is this is nothing more than an attempt to defeat the people of Bossier City. The Anti-Term Limits Council and Charter Commission, their sole goal is to violate the First Amendment rights of the citizens of Bossier City to petition their government. It's really that simple. That's proven over and over again by their actions with numerous examples that I stand prepared to give you. They contend they have an urgent need to get these changes in these propositions to the existing charter that needs to be placed on the ballot. They're so urgent, it took them 20 years to get here, and the people petitioning to change the city for them to take action. Think about that. That's how important it is. It took them 20 years to get here to do it. So, in fact, in 2021, like was said, we elected a new mayor, Tommy Chandler, and a couple of new councilmen, and they ran on a platform of bringing transparency to Bossier City, accountability, and term limits. And shortly after that, they sought to do exactly that. In fact, they called for a charter commission at this same city council, and you know what? All these councilmen who would oppose our petition, they refused to call a charter commission. Wasn't going to have nothing to do with it. Imagine that. So the anti-term limits councilman who, expressed the need to have these propositions placed upon the ballot, refused to call a charter commission. And, don't take my word for it about the purpose of the propositions, but rather let me read a statement of the city judge's wife, who was one of the appointees to the Charter Commission. On 7/22 of 24, The city judge's wife states, quote, "I'm willing to say this on the record because I want everyone to know my thought process. My thought is if this is pushed off and we can't do it before the end of July, it's not going to get on the December ballot, and the voters are not going to get to vote on our changes to the charter. Meanwhile, other changes may be on there. So what happens with the stuff that's on the ballot with the petition instead of the voters getting the option of what we have?" End quote. In other words, the purpose of the Charter Commission amendments and propositions were to thwart the citizens' petition to amend the charter to affect retroactive term limits. In fact, the Charter Commission was such a fiasco and a blatant affront to the people of Bossier City that on July 30th of 2024, Mayor Tommy Chandler called for disbanding the Charter Commission, stating, quote, "We have all seen what has happened with the Charter Commission over the past several weeks. I believe this is in the best interest of Bossier City to disband this commission," end quote. The product that you have before you today is a result of a manipulated process to achieve a certain outcome. From the appointment of members who have direct monetary interests in the outcome, to the exclusion of representation from certain districts within the city, to attempts to hold meetings without quorums, disparaging information being said to be publicly released regarding the chairman unless he was to resign, alleged walking quorums, secret ballot voting. We even had secret ballot voting in these Charter Commission meetings. I don't know that I've seen that around this legislature, but, all for the simple purpose of thwarting, the people just simply wanting a vote on retroactive term limits. We expect strongly for a very favorable ruling coming out of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. We both sat in oral arguments a couple of weeks ago. The judges, in their questioning and statements, were very strongly worded, and anyway, that's an opinion, and we feel very confident. So, in closing, on behalf of over 3,000 citizens, and I want you to keep that in mind, we could have gotten a whole lot more. We could have. I mean, people were ripping it out of our hands. They want change in Bossier City government. And, they wanted retroactive term limits because they want to see a change in the leadership in the government. We have people that have been in there for 24 years. This version that's being put forward, that's going to put them over the 30 and up to the 40-year range. How much is enough? We would ask that you defer these propositions until the court proceedings are concluded, at which time, most likely, the people's petition will be out of the Second Circuit. The anti-term limits, good old boys propositions can all be on the same ballot with ours. Let the people decide this issue. Let it all go on one ballot. Let the people of Bossier City decide whether they truly want retroactive term limits or they want the propositions that, the hand-picked people of the good old boys, let's let them just make the decision. But you can't do it if you go ahead now and you put this on the ballot, because I disagree with the attorney. He says that, if the people's petition comes after the fact, it can then amend the most recently passed charter. I disagree with his opinion, and we know I'm not a lawyer, Rhodes Scholar, stupid bill, but I do know that attorneys always say, well, that's just an opinion, especially they attack the AG's office. It's just an opinion. Well, that's his opinion as well.
Sure.
And
Okay, we have some questions. Why don't we get to some
Definitely.
questions? Mr. Bach, or you withdrew? Okay, Senator Foyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and just your last point, Mr. Lowry, I was going to ask you about that. Why would you be precluded from bringing the retroactive proposition at a later date if this perspective went on the ballot in March? That's where I'm a little confused, why you couldn't bring the other one later.
Well, in our charter, and the assistant city attorney didn't say this part, but once you pass a amendment to the charter pertaining to a certain section, there is a time limitation before another amendment can be placed on the ballot or brought before the people of the city of Bossier. That's in our charter. So there is that. And to the question of could we go out and get 3,000 signatures again? Yes, sir, we can most certainly go out and do it. But how many times do we need to go out and collect 3,000 to 4,000 signatures? If the city charter and state law provides for citizens to be able to petition their government, and the language says shall place it on the ballot for the voters to do, if our government won't honor that, then I don't know what the point of all of this is.
Yeah, and look, I have no opinion on the proposition. I'm simply trying to determine if all the rules have been followed to put this proposition on the ballot. And so if, once again, if we were to vote to put the proposition that's before us today on the ballot in March, I'm not sure why you would be precluded from having the second proposition on the ballot in May.
Because the charter would prevent it. The charter would say that this is amending the same ballot initiative that was placed on the ballot in March, and therefore there is a time that limits a similar amendment being put on the ballot. Now, I don't know the answer to this question, but if the Second Circuit comes out and orders it, I would think that that order would be in conflict with the city charter. And I can tell you right now, this statement has been made. You can go back and watch the Charter Commission meetings where the Assistant City Attorney argued about the issue of a newly adopted charter and the fact that our petition amends an old charter. So there will be an attorney who's going to step up and going to say their petition is moot and no longer valid because it amends a charter that is no longer in existence.
Okay, I understand your position now. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Ms. Freel, I have a question for you because I know you have an opinion. So it is my understanding from your comment that the City Council failed in its responsibility to move forward something that they really didn't have discretion in terms of voting forward?
That's at least the determination that the trial court made. Now, granted, the Court of Appeal could, I guess, theoretically decide a different way. It's just whether or not they have any discretion. It's just frustrating to me that the Second Circuit didn't address this quickly. It sounds like the oral arguments were a month ago, and this could have been avoided had they just decided it. Now it puts us in a difficult position because I don't see where there's any legal impediment for item number 7 to go forward. I certainly would make myself available if there's a call for a special meeting, but there are so many things that have to take place between now and the time frame for an election that would be difficult.
The city council of Bossier could resolve this if they wanted to. They could resolve this Tuesday of next week. They could do it right now. They could put a resolution to place the people's petition on the ballot at this same election, and they could get it to you in time for it to be there. But they're not going to do it. The whole purpose of this Charter Commission and these amendments are to prevent the people's petition from moving forward. That's it in a nutshell. And you're voting to oppose the 3,000 plus citizens of Bossier City's, will to place a measure and make a change in their government. Remember, it took these folks 20 years and us going out and collecting signatures for them to get here today on this. They had no will, no desire to do it until we took action. And I think it sends a bad message to reward them by...
Right.
And I'll just point out that under the laws that you all passed, a mandamus has to be heard very quickly, expeditiously, and so it's frustrating to me that the courts have waited this long to decide this issue.
Right. So let me ask you this, Ms. Freel. So let's say that we move forward yesterday and move the City Council's version. What happens? Let's say that the court decides in favor of the noes. What happens then? That we end up with both measures on the ballot?
Well, I don't know what relief was requested in the lawsuit and what the order was from the court, but the reality is there's still a process to get something on the ballot. It would, and so it was just based on this paragraph that I have in front of me. It appears that you all said, Council, you need to get this on your agenda to vote on it, and they refused to put it on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
And so you would have to have a meeting of the council. And the council doesn't have to wait until the court rules. Like you said, they could on their own at any time do it, which would moot out the case. Obviously, they feel like they have some legal arguments. Again, it would have been nice if the court would have decided it. But I think that we're in a difficult position because there's nothing that should prevent this commission from voting on number 7 today.
So
And-
let me ask you this then, again, your opinion. Let's say we did defer this to next month, or hoping that the courts would answer. What would be the effect of that?
So the problem is that it's too late to put on the March 29th ballot because the Secretary of State's deadline is January 2nd. So we can't wait till next month. I mean, we could wait a week, we could wait 2 weeks, but we can't wait until January because there's a problem, correct?
Mrs. Freel, may I add to his question? Because I think that the point that I pointed out, that there was a sense of urgency that I think that was false. It was presented by the previous comments. The statute that I just read says that the body has to present the amended charter within 18 months. Nothing will be wasted if they wait until May and they put both on the May ballot. So what would legally stop this body from deferring one more time, which would put it on the May ballot, which is what our group desires, which is what the people desire? And then I think the other thing about this is the tenor in Bossier City right now, it was so thick in this city that they have defied the public. And I will also say that our representatives in our area believe in term limits, but I have never heard one person say that they would argue against retroactivity of our term limits. Not one person that's an elected official. I don't think that anybody who's an elected official would argue against term limits.
Okay. Mr. Bacala, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. When was the mayor elected in the current council?
In spring of 2021.
So 2021, they took office in 22?
In 21.
They took office January 1st or whatever, 21?
They took office in July.
July 21, which means they will come back up in July 25.
That's right. Their election is this coming March, and then they will take office this coming July.
Okay.
No one's
That- So when is their election?
March, this
So
coming
obviously-
2025.
Obviously, it will not apply to this election,
That's correct.
right? So the point I'm trying to make is I'm wondering, is it almost a moot point? I mean, right now, these same people who are serving in office today will be running in March if they choose to, and will be elected if the citizens want them, right? So there's only one question before us today. And the question before us today is, do we want to allow this amendment to go on the ballot, which is term limits going forward, right? And I think if we vote yes and let the people decide on that, then you have, since it doesn't affect the upcoming election, you still have 3 years, 4 years to modify that to make it apply retroactively. So I think the smart vote is yes, because you are not affecting the next election with this amendment, but you still have the opportunity before the following election to get what you want. And I'm just trying to logically follow the sequence. So I'm just trying to make that point.
Representative Bacala,
Do you disagree with
no, I
that
think
analogy?
you're accurate in your assessment, but you left off one thing. You're validating, ignoring the will of the people. Again, 3,000 plus citizens. You're validating a government.
I don't want to validate. I'm for. Look, if it was up to us, if it was before us today, I'd be validating the citizens by voting yes. But that's not what's before us today. It's a yes or no vote on the term limits that are not exactly what you want. But that's the only thing that we're voting on. And we can vote against that, and say no, we don't. We're against that proposal going before the voters. Which, may mean the same thing. I mean, but at the same time, I'm trying to logically look at this thing and say, okay, we're not going against the voters because you're still tied up in court. At such time as you're not, let's put it on the ballot. And there's plenty of time to do that. So I don't know that if I vote yes to this, I'm not sure that that's an invalidation of the public. It's just this is all that's before us. This is it. This is the only thing, and I think this is a procedural. Is it properly advertised? Is it properly this? Is it properly that? I'm trying not to get in the local political fray, and when you come to us for another election that says the citizens petitioned the government for retroactive term limits, and we'd like to put that on the ballot, I'm pretty sure I'll vote yes for that one too. But this is the only thing I got. Right here, what's in front of us.
Okay, Ms. Freel?
Agree with that, and I'll say that one of the remedies that the people of Bossier has is when they go to the polls and they vote in March.
Speak first, and then I'll break you guys.
The only
For
way they'll
their
have that
council
remedy,
members and their mayor.
the only way they'll have that remedy by people's petition is if the councilmen agree with them.
But elected officials every day have to be concerned, and so aren't the mayor and council positions up for election in March? Is that accurate? So you will have a say in what happens.
Well, I just want to make one more comment, and I'll stop after this, and Mr. Lowry may have other comments. I think the frustration of the people will be that if there's an opportunity to defer until May and it has no impact on their efforts in the Charter Commission, because you could make the same argument that if you defer until May, you could vote on both at the same election. You have 4 months, 5 months to resolve that, plenty of time for everybody to get it on the ballot. I don't know why there's not a good legal argument that says that if you defer, it does not make their resolution moot in any way. It can go forward because I gave you the statute that says it. So I would just say that it's rewarding the behavior that you have to, for the people to have to sue their government to get anything done.
Okay. Ms. Freel has another question.
One issue I see with the deferral is that we can't control the courts and when they're going to decide it. I mean, you might have a situation where you don't have a decision in time for something to be put on the May ballot. And so, but what you do eliminate is if you have members that are going to be elected in March and their terms are changed because of the law change, then that would also negate any constitutional arguments that they would have. So again, you would have a remedy in voting for people who support the people and those that don't. It's not ideal. It's terrible. I wish someone would have come and talked to me before today, but I don't know that we have a choice to vote against this because we don't know what the courts are going to do. They could wait a year before they decide. And then you're going to have the cycle of the people being elected in March, and then whether or not the retroactivity is going to be challenged as constitutional. And so it puts this body in a very difficult position, one that we shouldn't have to be in. We should just be voting on whether or not they satisfied the requirements to incur the debt to have this election.
Okay, let me make a couple of comments before I entertain a motion here. I think it's compelling that the judge ruled in your favor. I think that says a lot. I think that the city council did not do the responsible thing. And in an obvious effort to truncate retroactive, if not proactive, in fact, term limits. But it is what it is and what we deal with. And of course, our job is not to get into the politics. Our job is, we're not a court of law, and we don't presume to be. But I'm going to ask that everyone on this commission vote their conscience. I don't want anybody, no one is going to offend me if they vote differently than I do on this, which is a little unusual. Normally, everybody sort of goes along with the chairman. But I do oppose moving this forward. I think that the court could rule any time, and this thing could be cleaned up really fast. I deeply believe in the Constitution and the right for the people to petition their government, and I do think that it's being obstructed here. I agree with our group here at the coalition today. And so my vote is to defer, but I will entertain a motion. Okay? We have a motion, and your motion is, what's that? The motion is to move favorable. And is there any opposition? I oppose. I object. So,
Could I
you have a
add one
question?
more thing?
Sure.
I wanted to point out.
We
to
have a
this-
second on the motion? Okay, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead on that. But I do object. Are there any other objections? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the busload of Bossier City citizens who are in support of you deferring this that came down. They organized themselves to show support, and thank y'all for the effort. It says something about citizen activism. It's real. It's unfortunate that citizen activism goes to die in their government.
Okay. So I guess we need to have a roll call vote? Okay.
Ms. Freel?
Aye. Oh, I've got to, this is the first time I've done a roll call vote, so I apologize. So which one do I hit to make that happen? This one? What do I?
You need to turn her mic on so she can vote.
Oh, we have to go it individually? Okay. All right, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, yes?
Yes. Lieutenant Governor Nungesser? Ms. Newsom? Yes. Mr. Lester? Yes. Yes. President Henry? Yes. Yes. Senator Womack? Yes. Senator Foyle? Yes. Senator Edmonds? Yes. Representative McMakin? Yes. Yes. Representative McFarland? Yes. Representative Emerson? Yes. Representative Bacala? Yes. Commissioner Barra? Yes. Treasurer Fleming?
No.
No.
Okay.
I'd like to invite the people that came on the bus to come up to visit me on the 4th floor after this meeting.
And thank y'all very much for the amount of time y'all spent on this. It's been a lot of time, and we appreciate your hearing this.
Right, yeah, thank you very much. We have a motion to adjourn, a second. We got a second. Anyone object? We are adjourned. Okay.